Well, good morning, everyone. My name is John Clauson. I'm the Executive Director here at Kitsap Transit, and I want to start out with welcoming you all to what appears to be our new norm for a while. And this is the second in our first series of virtual community meetings. I appreciate your time and your attendance today. So I want to start out by just talking a little bit about what we're going to be doing here today and explaining how we're going to be moving forward through this virtual meeting. I'm going to start out by going through a quick PowerPoint slide that will speak to the impacts that the coronavirus has had on Kitsap Transit, both in the short term as well as some predictions of the future impacts to the transit system as best that we can tell at this point. We should have plenty of time at the end for questions, and that you'll be able to submit your questions online. Our Public Information Officer, Sanjay Bhatt, is on as well, and he will be capturing the questions and will be sharing those questions with me so that I can respond as best I can. If I don't have the answers for you, please, if you can provide us your contact information, I'll certainly get the answers and get them sent to you right away. The other thing I want to share is that these sessions, this is, as I said, the second of 3 sessions. All 3 sessions are being recorded, and they will be available on our website, and they should be available the first part of next week. So if you tune in late, or if you want to listen to this again, if you missed something, I would recommend that you go to our website, kitsaptransit.com, and you'll be able to get access to these recordings. With that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. But before I start into the slide presentation, I do want to acknowledge the outstanding team that we have here at Kitsap Transit. And as you can imagine, as this pandemic hit us rather quickly, we have been responding to the ever-changing environment that we're in, and I can't say enough about the staff here at Kitsap Transit. Certainly our frontline staff, our operators and our ferry crews, as well as I want to also acknowledge the maintenance crews, both vehicle maintenance and facilities. As you can imagine, as we started down this path together, we were responding quickly and making changes quickly to provide the service to the folks in Kitsap County, and making sure that we are protecting all of our employees as we move forward into this new event that we were faced with. So thank you for all of those, as well as even our administrative staff, who has been working extremely hard, some of them remotely, some of them, those that are truly the essential folks, have been working under this new norm and has done just an outstanding job. So I wanted to pass on a public thank you to the great team that we have here at Kitsap Transit. Starting with the PowerPoint, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk a little bit about the effect of COVID-19 to begin with, and how that's affected our operation, how it's affecting our financial picture, and also how we see going into the future as best we can the impact to the service in the community at large. So I wanted to begin with just talking a bit about the financial picture. This is a report that we produce, and it essentially is tracking the sales tax receipts for our operation. As many of you may know, but for those of you that don't, the way public transits are funded in the state of Washington, is primarily due to the local option sales tax that the voters approved. In the case of our transit operation, we have an 0.8% collected in the county, and that's about 85% of our total operating budget comes from sales tax. In the case of our passenger ferry program, which I will show you in a second, that service is funded by a 0.3 of a sales tax collected in Kitsap County, and it is exclusively used, and by RCW can only be used for the ferry operation. So we track the funds separately. The other thing I wanted to point out in regards to our sales tax receipts is that you'll notice here that this report covers January through March. There is about approximately 90-day delay between the time that you make the retail purchases at a store before we're able to see that sales. It has to be collected by the various merchants. Then they report it into the state, and then the state deals with it for a while before they send out the report to us. So that's why we're looking, the most recent data we have on the sales tax in Kitsap County is for the month of March. Now, I want to point out three things in regards to that. The first one here is comparing month to month from what we actually received versus what we had budgeted to receive. And for the month of March, you can see that we're about 18.6% down under what we had anticipated to receive as we moved through our budget. The next one is, this is more of a cumulative number, looking at how we are doing for the first 3 months, adding up all of the year-to-date information for January, February, March, comparing that actual to our budget. And as you can see here, we're down 7.71%. And then this number is one that we simply look at. How do we compare year-to-date numbers with the amount that we received last year, so that we can see any annual changes from year to year? And here we're down about 16, a little over 16%. As I mentioned, we track the ferry systems separately, so you can see the same numbers pretty much for the passenger ferry program, just that the total numbers are significantly less. Again, the difference between the 0.8 and the 0.3. Now, when you look at that, and what does that really mean? Well, it's difficult to predict exactly how the economy is going to respond. We certainly know that with the stay home, stay safe order that the governor issued, the economy pretty well slowed down to almost a stop, I think. So we had to kind of come up with different scenarios. How would we respond if the first one was if we've seen a 15% reduction, second 25%, and third, what if we see a 35% reduction? And now, you know, those reductions are what we would anticipate for the entire year. So it's not just month by month. We're looking at what we would anticipate receiving for the entire year. And as you can see, sales tax is a very, very large portion of the revenue, but that also would include the reduced revenues from our fares and parking and so on. The next is we looked at some of the added expenses that we're experiencing because of COVID, and then we look at simply what's the magic number here. What do we anticipate the impact to be? And as you can see, starting with almost $8 million short in what we anticipated for the 15%, and going all the way up to nearly 17 million if it does achieve that 35%. Now, I also want to point out that the federal government did, through the CARES Act, provide funding to public transit throughout the nation. And for Kitsap Transit, we're anticipating, at least on the transit side of the ledger, receiving just shy of $12 million in revenue. On the ferry side, you can see what our projections were there in these three different scenarios, and also you can see what the amount of CARES Act funding that we're anticipating receiving for the passenger ferry operation. Now, if you add all of that together, and here's the, we put it under sales tax, but here's the reduction in revenue for the three different scenarios, and you put in the total amount of the CARES funding, and you can see what would the financial picture look like at the end of 2020 for all three of those different scenarios. You'll notice in in the 15% category with the CARES funding that we're actually going to end the year with a bit of a surplus, which in my mind is wonderful, because that will help cover any reduced revenue that would be anticipated for 2021. Now you can see going across 25 and 35% what that looks like. Now, I need to also add to that we were very fortunate with the strong economy that we were experiencing prior to COVID, that our Board of Commissioners allowed us to put $4 million away in what we referred to at that point as a recession fund. So basically it was a rainy day fund, and we have an additional $4 million available to help cover, once again, some of these deficits. So although it's hard to understand and know exactly what the economy is going to do, we certainly have been paying attention to a number of different economists and how what their predictions are, knowing that they're a prediction. And some are suggesting that we're going to have a rather steep recovery. They refer to it, I think, as the V recovery, and then there are others who are predicting the U, which would extend it out further. At this point, honestly, it's anyone's guess just how quickly the economy is going to recover from this pandemic. So what are some of the things that we've had to deal with, and what are we doing as we move forward here? Certainly our first and foremost idea was that we need to keep the transit system operating. Certainly as the governor implemented the stay home, stay safe, he allowed for essential travel only. Essential travel, in our minds, we've seen, for example, first responders and healthcare workers using the transit system still for transportation to and from work. Certainly there are a number of folks in our community, transit dependent, that needs to use our service to get to grocery stores and drugstores and alike. So those are the types of services that we're still providing folks that need to go to kidney dialysis and doctor's appointment and so on. So we've been working really hard to make sure that we're providing safe transportation to the community. And providing safe means not only safe for our riders, but also to protect our employees and our operators. So as you can imagine, we've been doing a lot of things as quickly as we can. I know initially it was a real challenge for us to acquire personal protective equipment, masks in particular, for our employees, just because they were in such great demand throughout the nation that it was challenging, but we've gotten some progress in there. Cleaning and disinfecting our equipment certainly has been a major issue, once again, not only for our operators, but for our passengers. And we've implemented a number of additional things to our cleaning regimen that we have because of this pandemic. The first, the upper left corner, is basically a log sheet that is installed in each coach, and it is initialed the day and time that the coaches are clean. This is primarily to ensure the operators that the bus has been cleaned and when. I will say that we have given the operators the option that if they, for whatever reason, feel that the coach hasn't been cleaned, that they can simply call into our dispatch office and they will assign them a different coach so that we make sure that the coaches are going out clean and sanitized. The picture on the top right and the lower left is that each of these coaches are getting sanitized with an iodine spray. This has been shown to be very effective against a number of different viruses and bacteria, but certainly the coronavirus. And it is also safe for folks to be around. It's simply the same type of product that they use in hospitals to disinfect and protect open wounds and things of that nature. The lower right is also an example. In addition to the spray that we use, these coaches, each of the upholstery seats, for example, they're all being steam cleaned so that we are once again providing assurances that the coaches are being cleaned. In addition, as we move forward, we have done a number of things to protect our operators and our crews. This is an example. You'll be seeing these if you haven't already. We're installing these driver health shields. In grocery stores, I think they refer to them as sneeze guards. Basically, it is a clear plexiglass type of doorway that kind of encapsulates the operator, or at least provides a barrier between them and the number of folks that will be getting on and off the coaches. The left photo shows it in the closed position around the operator. The photo on the right shows that it can also be swung open, and it provides a separation between the front of the coach and the rear of the coach. So there's no visual impact whatsoever either way, actually, for the operators to be able to safely operate the coaches. We've also done things you probably, if you're one of our regular riders, you've noticed on the routed coaches that we've moved the yellow line back 6 feet. So that is basically, we're asking folks to stay behind the yellow line, and that provides a bit of separation between the operators and the riders. You will also start seeing here shortly, we're installing these mask dispensers on our buses. We've acquired masks that they will be available on the coaches, so when we do return to front door loading, in the case of the routed buses, that we will be asking folks to make sure that they wear some kind of a face covering. And if you don't have a face covering, we're going to have masks available there that you can take one so that you can maintain that coverage. Now, I know the whole issue of wearing face covering is very controversial. We're going to be asking folks, I believe, on our coaches that we would like you to wear them. And I think it's going to be mostly out of an abundance of caution. You can get your various reports that suggest that masks work, and you can get various reports that suggest that they really don't do anything for you. Our health district is still recommending, as well as the federal government in a number of publications, that folks wear face coverings when they're in public, and we're going to be asking people to do that as well. So we recognize that not everyone can wear face coverings for a variety of reasons, but for the most part, we're going to be asking folks to please, let's out of an abundance of caution, wear face covering so that we can assure that if you read the reports that say they're effective, then we're going to be ahead of the curve. We've also done a number of things to protect our operators, one of which is to reduce the capacity in our coaches so that we can help maintain that 6-foot separation. And these numbers are basically, for example, the routed buses, we have a variety of different sizes of coaches that we use, and this is numbers for our larger coaches. You will notice that in the worker driver buses that the maximum loads are larger. These buses are buses that are primarily serving the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, which has been in operation throughout this entire period. And one of the elements of the employees for PSN is that they must wear a mask. So the folks were pretty comfortable knowing that every one of the folks on those buses are required to wear their mask while they're on buses. And in addition, PSNS has been, we've recently implemented a process where each person boarding the bus has their temperature taken to make sure that they're not demonstrating any of the signs, or at least that one particular sign of potentially being affected. Our local and fast ferries, we've reduced the maximum loads on those boats as well, once again to provide that 6-foot separation for the riders. And just so that you can use it as a comparison, our vessels range anywhere from 118 passenger capacity to 150 passenger, and in case of the boats that we operate at Kingston, they even go higher than 150. So, but we're still maintaining that safe separation. We have established on our website a COVID-19 page that provides kind of up-to-date information on how we're responding to the ever-changing norm, as indicating some of the service reductions that we've had to implement. And as we move forward, any changes that we make as a result of dealing with this pandemic will be available there on our website. I mentioned the service reductions. We implemented rather quickly a 30% reduction in service, primarily because as we all hunkered down and stayed home, the ridership demand dropped pretty dramatically. So we've actually been able to reduce some of the service, but once again, we're trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in the operation. Again, because there are transit dependent folks that use our service to get to essentials. And we still have a fair amount of essential workers, healthcare workers, for example, first responders that need to use our service to get to and from their employment. So we've implemented that. And again, if you go back to that coronavirus webpage, you'll be able to link to a page here that will provide you with up-to-date information on any route that you use or did use if you need to. We also, as many of you know, we immediately removed the fares so that we were no longer collecting. That was done primarily to once again provide some of that separation between operators and passengers. Reduce that interaction between folks. In the coaches that were able to, we asked folks to board and deboard from the rear door, and we've restricted access through the front door to basically the disabled and senior who can get in from the back door. We eliminated a reservation system on our passenger ferries, primarily to Seattle, for a couple of reasons. One, once again, to eliminate some of that interaction between our crews and our passengers, as well as the demand dropped to the point where reservations were no longer necessary. So I think that's probably, I'm going to wrap it up with that as kind of what we've been up to and what we're kind of projecting, if you will, for our financial picture. I will say that in our service plan, what we do, because of the reduced capacity of our buses, there are times where we fill up that capacity of the bus before the route has finished its travel. And there are times where we may leave somebody at the bus stop simply because we've reached that capacity. What we have done and what we are doing is that we do have operators and coaches positioned throughout the community so that if we experience that on a route, that we can very quickly dispatch that shuttle bus, as we're referring to it, to pick up those folks that were left at the bus stop and be able to provide them transportation. As we go forward, if we see that we experience the need for that shuttle bus on a particular route at a particular time, we will then start adding service back, but it will be added back based on the demand for service. So as we move forward, that's kind of how we're going to approach it. I would also invite you all to go on to our website, and you can have access, or you can go directly to this address that we provided you here to fill out a survey. We're surveying our community to help us better understand what the transportation needs are currently, and what folks would like to see us be able to do as we move forward through this pandemic. And that's going to help us an awful lot to try to figure out how best to respond to the community's interest in being able to respond with transportation for this COVID pandemic. So I'm going to basically stop there with my presentation. I wanted to make sure that we had adequate time for questions. Sanjay Bhatt, our public information person, is here as well. And if you type in your questions, Sanjay will be able to pass those questions on to me. And once again, I'll do my best to answer the questions. And if I don't have the answers, I will certainly get you the answers. So Sanjay, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, John. Thanks to all who have submitted questions in advance. And like John said, if you have questions, you can type those into the questions panel, and we'll try and get to all of them before our time runs out. John, one of the questions submitted in advance: as passenger numbers increase with some returning to work, is there a plan to alter the 46-person maximum on the ferries or re-implement the reservation system?
Well, the capacity is hard to predict. Even as Kitsap County, as many of you, I hope, know, that there was an application made to move out of phase 2 and into phase 3. With phase 3, it does allow gatherings of up to 50, but there still is the requirement to provide the social distancing. So I have been in frequent conversations with our local health district throughout this entire pandemic event, and working with them and getting guidance from them as to how quickly we can relax some of those limits. Now, once again, one of the things that's going to help us be able to make modifications as we go forward, and this is not a guarantee, but it's certainly a component, is that if we do get folks to follow the guidance of please wearing face coverings, that's going to go a long way to looking for the ability to expand the capacity. But it's, at this point, going into phase 3, if we're successful, we're still going to be limited in capacity simply because of that social distancing requirement. The reservation system is something that we probably are not going to be reinstituting reservations for a while. Now that we have a 2-boat operation in Bremerton, which is where the reservation was needed, we basically have a vessel leaving every 30 minutes. So we're hoping that if we reach a point where we don't need the reservation system, and we're not there yet, I will tell you, that's a potential savings for the operating costs. But right now, there is not a date as to when we would re-implement reservations, and the capacity issue is dependent upon where we are in the recovery.
The next question, this one is about the fast ferries. When will Saturday sailings start? Just wondering in case I need to go to Seattle. When will toll collection start? And how can we as passengers support the crew at this time?
Well, Saturday service is on hold right now. Obviously, with the current conditions that we're under, we're still under the essential travel only, and Saturday, generally speaking, was more discretionary and not essential travel. So Saturday is on hold. I don't envision Saturday service coming back quickly, if at all, this summer, to be perfectly honest with you. So we're just going to have to wait and see how we progress through. You also have to remember, too, that as Kitsap County successfully progresses through these phases, and if we're successful going from phase 2 to phase 3, for example, King County is still, they just went to phase 2. So they're still asking folks who come to King County to be essential service only. So that really is driving an awful lot of the decision on when we would implement Saturday service. And I'm sorry, Sandhya, can you repeat the latter question on that one?
When will toll collection start? I think the question is more about when we will resume collecting fares, and how can we as passengers support the crew?
Well, the fare collection is something that we're working on right now. We want to implement these other protective measures for the crew and the bus operators. I showed you the shields, for example, on our buses. As we're able to get those installed, then at that point, we will be returning to fares. To be perfectly honest with you, even though fares are not a major portion of our operating expense, still is a revenue source. And when we can start collecting fares again and doing it safely, then we will reinstitute the fares. So my guess is that you'll probably see fares coming back as early as the 1st of July, but that specific date hasn't been determined yet. And as far as being able to support the crews, I got to say that what I've seen and heard, I'm talking with the crews, I think the biggest thing is the fact of wearing face covering. That's going to be probably the biggest thing that's going to help us all collectively, is that the more people that are willing to wear a face covering when they're on our services, the safer it is for everyone on board as well as our crews. So that would be my request that I would send out.
So the next question, I think, is dealing more with the bus service. How will you manage the passenger capacity to allow for social distancing during peak commuter hours as we transition through the phases of reopening? Thank you.
Yes, and that is going to be a challenge. As I mentioned, we are ready to implement as needed. And when I say as needed, it's going to be more based on if we start to see specific trips on our routes that routinely ask for that shuttle bus, then we will be adding additional buses into that particular trip so that we can maintain that social distancing and yet respond to the increasing demand. So it's going to be a work in progress, and we are watching every one of the routes daily. And as the operators experience these max loads, then we respond, and we'll be able to do that as we go forward.
The next question is, will the Southworth Ferry and additional Bremerton Fast Ferries be further delayed and or canceled? Thank you.
I don't believe that they're going to be canceled. Once again, the financial future is certainly we're in new territory and uncertain. We'll have to just kind of wait and see. So I need to put that caveat out there. But as we're approaching it now, there may be a delay in the implementation of the Southworth service, but that is due primarily because of the delivery of the new boats that we need to operate that service. This pandemic has also affected our construction firm that is building the boats, and there are delays that they have been experiencing, not only with their own workforce, but with suppliers not being able to meet the delivery requirements. So that's probably going to have the major impact on the implementation of service in Southworth. We are monitoring that almost daily, but we're continuing to work forward with the expectation that we're going to be implementing Southworth service this year. I would also add that we've had a bit of an increased interest, if you will, for the Southworth to begin, and that's primarily because of the challenges that the city of Seattle has experienced with the West Seattle Bridge. So if we're able to get that service in operation, that might just relieve some of the pressure that the community over there is experiencing with the bridge problem. For Bremerton, I don't envision any impacts. We're certainly not talking about any impacts to the service level other than the Saturday, which we've already communicated. But once again, I have to put that caveat out as we move forward through the economy in the next few months. That's the wild card that we'll just have to be prepared to deal with.
Okay, the next question deals with the bus schedules in Silverdale. The time schedules in Silverdale are frustrating because it wastes time trying to make connections and delays making appointments. When will service in Silverdale get back to normal times?
That's again a very good question. A lot of it is going to be dependent upon how quickly we can move through the phases of the stay at home, stay safe order. Certainly, if there are frustrations now, I would encourage folks to call our customer service folks or submit an email, however you'd like to, but share specifics with us. We still have our service development staff that is monitoring and watching and paying attention. And if you can point out any specifics, that will help us as we move forward.
Next question is, how much revenue has been lost as a result of the no fare collection policy?
Well, it's difficult to say just exactly how much has been lost because of the no fare. And why I say that is because we've lost a potential amount just due to the fact that our ridership dropped by just over 70%. So we've lost revenue in our fare box because of that, as well as by not collecting fares. So unfortunately, I can't give you a good number. In one of those slides previously in that estimating what the revenue impact would be, we did indicate what we anticipate seeing as reduced fare collection. But there again, that is based on projected downturns in the ridership, as well as the few months that we've been here without fares.
This is Sanjay Bhatt. I would encourage those of you who haven't asked a question yet to submit a question if you have one. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask a question. You'll see the question panel on your screen, and you can just type a question into that box.
While we're waiting for additional questions, I think I would just add as well, since we're talking about the central Kitsap area, to share with the folks that the future of our new transit center that we're working on for Silverdale, although it has slowed to a crawl, it is still progressing forward. We have been working with the folks at CHI as well as Kitsap County on some of the impacts and improvements that they're making as well as how that will affect our abilities to move forward with the transit centers. So it's, in my mind, it's all positive under the circumstances, and the project is still moving forward, although it's slowed down considerably. So one of the things that we're hoping for as we move forward, and with the grant funding that we've been able to secure to this point, is that if we can get that project under construction, that's going to help our economy recover if we can safely bring folks back to work in the construction trades, and that contribute towards that area of our economy. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but it's not been completely stopped. It is still progressing as far as the planning and designing and all of those aspects are concerned.
So we've got a flurry of questions that have come in. Is Kingston Ride going to continue to run 8 to 4 during these uncertain times? Thank you.
I would expect that it would. The beauty of the Kingston Ride type of service is that it really is only out traveling the roads when there's demand. Granted, we have a bus and an operator in the community available to respond, but we've also been able to blend some of the demand from the Kingston Ride to some of the demand of our access program. So we've been able to maximize the efficiencies during these challenging times and even before. So right now, I would say that, yes, we're still continuing to plan to operate the Kingston Ride.
Next question is, what is the potential impact of ferries from West Seattle into Seattle due to the West Seattle Bridge being offline?
Well, that is an issue that we're going to have to deal with at some point. King County is looking at the potential of expanding the number of sailings from West Seattle with their water taxi. I will say that King County has been reaching out, looking for additional dock space, as well as a potential contractor to provide the service. They've gone out to bid for somebody that has a boat and a dock, certainly somebody that has a boat. So it hasn't been determined yet, other than we are all preparing for the potential of additional sailings coming in. I can tell you, right now that in the last conversation I was on with King County and Washington State Ferries, King County needs another boat to be able to really dramatically increase the number of sailings out of West Seattle. So we'll have to stay tuned. I will say that we too are working as we work on the development of a southward schedule, and that has to be factored into the schedules of all 4 routes now that use that dock in downtown Seattle. We are too looking for any options that are available for other landing sites in Seattle. So best I can do at this point is we're working on it, and I will be happy to announce any advancement as soon as we have something nailed down.
So you showed a slide of routes, some of which had been suspended on April 1st. One of the questions that came in is, when will suspended service on buses start again?
Well, that's hard to just give a blanket answer to. I'll give you one example of a route that we suspended in Port Orchard, and it's a route that serves the Annapolis Ferry Dock. We suspended that one, and we actually changed some of it to provide better service between Annapolis and downtown Port Orchard, because we installed a new float in Annapolis, and it took that dock out of commission for a while. During that construction period, we moved the boat that we used for the Annapolis-Bremerton route over onto the Port Orchard-Bremerton route. So during the peak period, we have a boat leaving one side or the other basically every 15 minutes. Now, what that's done for us is, because of COVID and because of the reduced capacity of those boats, it has allowed us the ability to, for those folks who are not going to be able to get onto a specific sailing, within 15 minutes, there's going to be another sailing to get folks to one side or the other. So it actually has enhanced the quality of the service connecting those two communities. So the need to bring back the 81, for example, is dependent. We're going to continue to run that Annapolis boat out of Port Orchard with the other Port Orchard service to be able to respond to the reduced capacity. Therefore, we wouldn't bring that route back until we're able to separate those two ferry routes. So again, you'd have to look at each route specifically, and I couldn't give you a date, a blanket date that they're all going to be back by a certain date. We're going to be responding to the community's needs and where the demand is required.
And I would just add to what John said that if you don't already, you should subscribe to our rider alerts so that when we do announce the resumption of service on suspended bus routes, you'll be the first to know. You can sign up by going to kitsaptransit.com and clicking on the link in the upper right corner that says subscribe to rider alerts. The next question is, what are the next steps for the new property acquired at 6th Ave in downtown Bremerton? Thank you.
Right now, pretty much you won't see much in the way of changes. The biggest thing that we've been able to accomplish is the guaranteed future of that parking lot. So for right now, we're going to continue just operating it as a park and ride lot, and the folks that are there leasing the facilities will remain there through at least the terms of their current lease. The future of that property is yet to be determined. We are expanding our electric bus fleet. We were just successfully awarded a federal grant. It's going to allow us to acquire 5 more electric coaches. And, as our fleet is growing and the changes that we're experiencing in that fleet, we may look at possibly removing that building and installing some type of an electric bus type of operation out of there. We have long-term, and I mean really long-term, looked at what are our options for a maintenance facility in the central Kitsap area, Bremerton area. Our facility that we have as you come into Bremerton at Charleston is we're really outgrowing that facility. We pretty much we're maxing out the parking that we have available for coaches. The building that we maintain our buses in was built back in the, I believe, the late 30s, early 40s. And it's working well for the fleet now, but as we once again expand the fleet, looking into, as an example, once we get to the point of needing high capacity buses, we've looked at and we're moving forward with the purchase of double deck buses when we need them. That facility in Charleston is not capable of maintaining a double deck bus. The doorways just aren't tall enough. So we've been looking at what our options might be. We've looked at the possibility of redeveloping that 6th and Montgomery site, putting in a multi-story structure, if you will, that would fit with the topography of that area. The bottom floor would be more of like for buses, and then the upper floors would be park and ride and some of the others. So the future is unknown, but it does provide us with the ability to look into the future and give us some options. So that's the best I can convey on the purchase. We were lucky to be able to purchase it when we did. The former owners gave us a really a good price on the purchase of that, and we were able to pull together some state funding and acquire it. So it's just going to help us protect the future and maintain that park and ride for sure.
Again, if you haven't submitted any questions, I encourage you to do so. We've got some folks who are submitting follow-up questions. Let's see. What happens to money that is pending on bus passes that have not been added to passes yet?
Well, I'm assuming that question is related to the federal government and the transfer passes. If it hasn't been used for a bus pass, I know in the case of the federal government, they routinely and on a monthly basis, they sweep those debit cards. So if those cards haven't been used and converted to a bus pass, then that money just goes back to the federal government. It would be the same for employers who contribute. If that money isn't used as a bus pass, it would go back to the employers.
The next question, the CDC advised against the public riding public transit due to possible exposure to COVID-infected individuals. Has CDC provided guidance on how transit agencies should sanitize its assets to prevent the spread of COVID-19? And if so, do the KT measures fulfill CDC guidelines?
They have provided guidelines for public transportation options. And yes, we are certainly meeting, if not exceeding, the requirements. And as we go forward, we're going even beyond those requirements. As an example, as I mentioned earlier, we're sanitizing the coaches every day that they're in service, but we're also going to be bringing in some new technology. UV lights is a technology that we're going to be installing soon. Two different UV systems. One is the same type of system that they use in the back of ambulances. It is a light system that will kill basically any bacteria and viruses on surfaces. Now that system is a type of system that would only be used when the coach is parked and there's no one on board. The system, we would be able to turn it on, and within a set amount of time, it would be able to disinfect the entire coach with this UV lights. In addition to that, we're also looking at installing, they now have systems available that we can put into the HVAC system of coaches, and that UV light would be on and it would be sanitizing the air as it gets circulated in the buses. And the system that we're moving forward with will basically sanitize and do an air exchange in our largest of our buses. I believe it was once every 30 minutes, but it might be more frequent at that. But that type of system can be operated while the bus is in service, since it's basically contained within the HVAC system. So we are moving forward, and yes, they did make that announcement. I know that there's been a bit of pushback on it throughout the nation, and I know the National Association has been working with the CDC to come up with a way that folks can feel comfortable and safe in using public transportation. And we're doing everything that we're aware of and that we know of to make sure that our coaches and our service and our boats are meeting or exceeding those standards.
Thank you, John. The same person had a follow-up. Do we have an idea of when the UV light systems will become operational on Kitsap Transit's vehicles?
I don't have an exact date. I know that the light fixtures that we're going to be installing under the ambulance type method, they're in production, and we've ordered them. So I don't have a delivery date as of yet as to how soon we will have those. And then it's up to our maintenance department to get them installed. My understanding in talking with our maintenance director is that he's already ordered the system for the HVAC system, but as you can imagine, we're not the only transit system in the US. So the demand for these things is very high, and but we've got our order in, and as quickly as we can get delivery on them, we'll be installing them.
A follow-up question from another person. The 6th Avenue purchase really makes sense. Great option. Thank you. Could you share more specifics about KT's effort to find more landing docks and where this is being considered?
Well, landing and docks, I'm assuming that that's primarily focused in Seattle. We have a consultant on board right now that is doing an analysis of the Seattle waterfront and trying to come up with the long-term, where's the best options, what are the best options that we have long-term for a docking facility on the Seattle waterfront. We were also just successfully awarded a grant that isn't available to us for a couple of years, which is fine with the timing, that provides funding for the preliminary engineering and design for a regional facility on the waterfront. So we're moving forward with that. There's a few options available that I'm aware of. A lot of them come with their own issues and challenges. So we're just going to have to wait and see what this analysis provides us as far as the best location. As far as current, you know, we're just looking at whatever is available along the waterfront and what would work for our current operation, and if there's a way that we can work out some kind of a use agreement with whomever the owners are. So I don't have anything in particular at this point, but we are working the issue to try to come up with some solutions.
And we are out of time for questions. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions in advance and live, and want to let you all know that you will be receiving an email after this webinar with a brief evaluation that we would like you to give us feedback on how you think this format of online meeting, how it went for you, what you liked, what you think we could improve upon. So we'd really appreciate you taking a look at that when it hits your inbox. John, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, other than I just want to thank folks for spending your time with us. I always appreciate the opportunity to kind of share with the community what we're up to, and I would prefer to do it face-to-face where there's better opportunities for interactions, and it helps me a lot know where the concerns are in the community and make sure that we're addressing them. So thank you very much. Please be safe. Do all of the directives that we've received on what we need to do to protect ourselves and our families and our communities. And with that, once again, thank you, and hope to see you all soon.